because you only finished middle school, you ended up in such a low-end job, right? Well, no. Poor thing. Why are you here, Samantha? I came here for an interview. I'm currently working in an IT company, but I want to advance my career. Career advancement. Yes. I graduated from Harvard University and got a decent job, but I wanted to do more. I really resonated with the company values here, but I guess you wouldn't understand. Talking about IT stuff to a janitor like you, dressed in work clothes, would be totally over your head. Do you clean hair every day? The woman looking down on me suddenly had an expression I had never seen before. The story goes back to when I was a middle school student. My name is Michael Johnson. I was born into an ordinary family with a father, a mother, and a younger brother. I loved my family, was fairly good at studies, excelled in the soccer team, and had a fun middle school life. I was relatively popular among friends, and bullying was something I was never involved in. Going to school every day was fun, and I loved spending time at home because my family got along well. Even though my life seemed smooth sailing, there was one thing that didn't go well. It was about Samantha. Samantha was beautiful, smart, and athletic. At first, I even thought I liked her. In a romantic sense. Since Samantha and I were always competing for the top ranks in our grades, I felt a sense of camaraderie, and besides, she was beautiful, so I couldn't help but follow her with my eyes. Yet, Samantha disliked me. Despite getting along with almost everyone else, Samantha was the only one who seemed to detest me. The first time I realized this was during a seat change. We were just fresh into middle school, and the seats determined by a lottery put Samantha and me one behind the other. Samantha was in front, and I was behind. I was happy, thinking I got a chance to talk to the beautiful Samantha. The first time we spoke was when Samantha passed a handout back to me. Thanks, Samantha, you're surprisingly tall. What do you mean surprisingly? No, you're so slim, so you don't look that tall from a distance. Oh, really? That was so cold, and kind of rude, was my first impression. Despite her beauty, it was a bit disappointing. There were a few more occasions to talk after that, but she was just as unfriendly then. For example, when Samantha and I scored the top marks in a test, Mr. Miller said something like this. This time, Samantha is second and Michael is first. It's great to have both the top students in this class. You two should make the most of this fortunate environment. Come on, Mr. Miller, you should be teaching us properly, right, Samantha? Just because you're in first place, you're so full of yourself. I won't lose next time. I tried to talk to Samantha with a sense of camaraderie, but she seemed to see me as an adversary. When we were both chosen as class representatives because we were smart, she would never go to the committee meetings with me. And when we had to work together, she was distant in a way you wouldn't expect from classmates. It made me wonder if she disliked being with me that much. The decisive moment was when I accidentally overheard a conversation among the girls. Hey, don't you think Michael is cool? Yeah, I get it. He seems like he can do anything, kind of like a hero from comic book. Is everyone aiming for him? The competition is too fierce for me, but Samantha could be a match, right? True, the only one who matches him would be Samantha. Samantha is definitely the most popular girl among us. Michael sometimes looks at her, doesn't he? So, what do you think, Samantha? Is he an option? What are you talking about? Me, with Michael? Impossible. I don't get why he's popular at all. Really? That's surprising. Yeah. The only high-spec guy who could match Samantha would be Michael, right? Stop it, please. So, I'm really out of the question, huh? Hearing Samantha outright dismiss me like that was a shock. I had no idea why she disliked me so much, but Samantha continued to avoid me and was always cold towards me. My middle school life, where everything but my relationship with Samantha was going well, changed drastically in my third year. My father was in a traffic accident. He hovered between life and death but managed to survive, though he was so badly injured that he couldn't continue his previous job. My mother, who had been a homemaker, started working part-time as a result. My father's long rehabilitation journey began, and our family finances gradually became tighter. Although I was in my third year of middle school and facing exams, I started to consider giving up on high school. It wasn't just because of our financial difficulties, but also because of my younger brother. He loved playing with computers and had a dream of becoming an engineer, even though he was still young. To make his dream come true, he needed to go to university. If I gave up on high school and started working right after middle school, maybe I could support my brother's education. Once I started thinking this way, my decision was made. After my father's accident, when my mother started working part-time, I began a newspaper delivery job. A kind gentleman there offered to introduce me to a cleaning company run by an acquaintance, so I decided to work there after graduating from middle school. When I told my parents, they strongly opposed. They argued that I should at least finish high school, perhaps with a scholarship, before finding a job, especially since I had good grades and they really wanted me to go to university. Eventually, my parents even apologized to me, saying, "We're sorry for putting you in this situation." At that time, I didn't consider my circumstances unfortunate. I had purely decided to do what I could for my beloved family, so in a way, it was what I wanted. After convincing my parents, I started working at the cleaning company. It was tougher than I had imagined at first. I had naively thought that cleaning would be something I could handle, even with just a middle school education, but I was wrong. Working in society was not easy. It was different from my part-time newspaper delivery job. But because the people at the cleaning company were so kind, I was able to learn the job properly and continue working. A lot of time has passed since then. I'm still working in building maintenance. The entrance to the building prominently displayed a sign for interview venue. Today, the company that owns this building was scheduled to conduct mid-career interviews, and one after another, people in suits entered through the automatic doors. As I was wiping the windows in my work clothes, I spotted a familiar face among them. It was nostalgic. The only classmate who disliked me back in middle school, Samantha. She had become significantly more beautiful as an adult, but her features were unmistakable, and I recognized her at a glance. I wondered if she would notice me as I continued to wipe the windows. Then, Samantha approached me and said, "Michael." "Oh, Samantha, long time no see. Because you only finished middle school, you ended up in such a low-end job, right?" "Well, no, poor thing." Why are you here, Samantha?" "I came here for an interview. I'm currently working in an IT company, but I want to advance my career." "Career advancement?" "Yes. I graduated from a prestigious university and got a decent job, but I wanted to do more. I really resonated with the company values here, but I guess you wouldn't understand. Talking about IT stuff to a janitor like you, dressed in work clothes, would be totally over your head. Do you clean hair every day?" "Well, Just as I was about to respond, a woman in a suit hurried over to us. "President Johnson." "What?" Samantha's eyes widened in surprise as she looked at me. I had never seen such an expression from her during our middle school days. "Mr. Johnson, you are cleaning hair again, I see. So you, who came for the interview today, Samantha, was it? You can leave now. It's unacceptable to show such disrespect to our president." "President? Well, sorry about that, Samantha. I didn't mean to deceive you, but I'm the president of this company." "What do you mean?" "While working at the cleaning company, I also earned my high school and university degrees. I climbed the ranks within the cleaning company, got involved in management, and my skills led me to become the president. In the process, I found something I wanted to do and started another company. I gathered talented engineers to develop cleaning equipment and robots. When I started the business, I approached my brother, who had become a skilled engineer, to join me. The products developed by this company became huge hits, rapidly gaining recognition. Although I'm the president, I'm not comfortable in the limelight, so I left media interviews to my vice president brother, leading many to mistake him for the president. I suppose Samantha was also under that impression. After I explained everything, Samantha looked astonished. "So, that was it. But why are you cleaning hair dressed like that?" "Oh, I wanted to test a new product we made, and I thought it'd been nice to watch the interviewees coming in today, so I decided to multitask." "I see. That's so like you, Michael." Samantha seemed convinced in a strange way. "The woman in the suit, my secretary Lucy," continued. "Mr. Johnson, we can send her away without question, right? Someone who looks down on others with such arrogance doesn't belong in our company." Now, the first interview hasn't even started yet, so let's just proceed with it normally. She graduated from Harvard University, and she's genuinely interested in our company's philosophy and has things she wants to achieve by joining us. But Mr. Johnson, let's keep what happened here between us. I want the interviewers to assess her based on a fair perspective. If they deem her a valuable asset to our company, I intend to hire her." "Understood." Although Lucy seemed reluctant, she agreed. Samantha then headed towards the interview location. Later, I met Samantha again. Indeed, Samantha had passed our company's selection process. Among many applicants, she earned her place. I thought to myself, just as I expected. Throughout middle school, I had seen Samantha's efforts firsthand. Before tests, she would go to the local library alone and study from morning till evening, and I often saw her practicing her club activities alone. Despite achieving good results, she never boasted in front of others or looked down on anyone. She got along very well with other classmates, so I knew she wasn't an arrogant person. Probably, I did something to offend her and ended up being disliked. After greeting the new employees as their president, Samantha stopped me. "Mr. Johnson, Samantha, congratulations on joining us. Could I have a moment of your time later?" "Yeah, sure." When I met with Samantha later, she apologized sincerely for her behavior the other day. "I'm truly sorry for my behavior that day." "Oh, no, it's fine. And you don't need to be so formal with me when it's just the two of us. You can treat me as a classmate, just like before." "I can do that." "You're still as serious as ever. I've been thinking, were you okay with joining a company run by me, whom you greatly disliked? I mean, we did go through with the interview, but knowing I was the president must have been somewhat unpleasant for you, and I thought you might even decide to withdraw from the interview process." "What? Dislike? Yeah, you've disliked me since middle school, haven't you?" "No, that's not it at all." "What? It's the opposite. I liked you, Michael, and because I liked you, I couldn't speak properly. I couldn't be myself around you. Really. I was too embarrassed. I really wanted to talk more with you, Michael, and become friends, but the more I thought about it, the more distant my behavior became. I never imagined you thought I disliked you." "What? It totally seemed like you disliked me. I was so worried about what I might have done." "Well, I'm sorry." No, it's all good." At this moment, our misunderstanding was finally cleared up. Curious, I asked Samantha when and why she started liking me. It turns out, before we started middle school, Samantha was being harassed by an older boy during a holiday. He was demanding her contact information and wouldn't let her leave without it, grabbing her and not letting go. Apparently, I happened to pass by and intervened to help her. Back then, driven by a strong sense of justice, I often stepped in to help classmates in trouble, so honestly, I didn't remember that particular incident very well, but for Samantha, that was the moment she fell for me. To her, I was like a hero. So, that's what happened. To think I hated you, but with my attitude back then, it's understandable why you'd think that. I'm sorry. No, I'm the one who misunderstood, thinking you hated me, but I'm glad that wasn't the case. I never imagined that after all this time, Samantha and I would reconcile and even become friends. For a while, Samantha and I didn't interact directly. My work became increasingly demanding, and I was swamped every day. Samantha was also busy learning various aspects of her new job. Occasionally, I'd hear phrases like that new mid-career hire is amazing, so I knew Samantha was quickly making her mark in the company. And then, on the day it was decided to launch a new project, Samantha's name came up during the executive meeting about the project team members. I think she's a great fit. She's new, but she's really capable. The executives, unaware that Samantha and I were classmates, explained how talented she was. I agreed to appoint Samantha as a project leader. My brother, with a sly grin, also agreed. I had confided in my brother about Samantha, and his continued smirking made me slightly regret sharing. This project was the biggest yet, so I often received progress updates and offered advice. Naturally, as the project leader, Samantha was the one reporting to me. Initially, our interactions were purely professional. That concludes this report. Thank you. Let me know if anything comes up. Will do. However, as we met more frequently, we started exchanging a few more words, and eventually, we even made small talk. Good to hear things are going smoothly. Yes, thanks to everyone's competence. Hey, Samantha, have you had lunch yet? Not yet. How about we go to this amazing Chinese place I know? I thought you'd be into more fancy or upscale dining. What are you talking about? The fried rice and dumplings there are the best. I go there 3 times a week. Then, I'll happily accept the treat. And just like that, we started having meals together. Samantha became someone I could rely on at work and enjoy talking to. Finally, the project was a success. Thanks to Samantha's leadership, the project proceeded smoothly and significantly boosted our company's revenue. To celebrate this success, a team dinner was organized. The party was a blast, and despite the insistence of my colleagues, I joined the after-party, which was rare for me. When there were calls for a third round, I politely declined, and Samantha, having led the team, also gracefully excused herself, saying, "I'll be heading home now." While some lamented the leader's departure, Samantha smiled apologetically and waved goodbye to everyone. I felt nostalgic, remembering how Samantha had always been kind and friendly to everyone but me. Seizing the opportunity as she was leaving, I called out to her. "Samantha, since you're heading home, how about we go together?" "Yes." Nobody is around anymore, so it's fine to interact as classmates. Though, I don't mind if you keep up your assertive attitude at the company. I can tact like that towards the president. Besides, I never wanted to be that way. I see. The old be mean to the ones you like tactic, right? Hey, don't get carried away. Sorry. By the way, Michael, why did you start working right after middle school? I always thought you would go to the same high school as me. After all, your grades were good. Well, for the first time, I shared with Samantha why I decided to work after middle school and what had happened to my family. Samantha listened intently, nodding along as I spoke. "It must have been tough for you." "Well, it was at first, but now, being a president and having to pay salaries to so many employees, it's a different kind of challenge. I guess there's always something challenging, no matter the time." "Michael, you're amazing. That hasn't changed. You have this enlightened outlook, which I've always found really cool." "Really? Even though you said you liked me back then. How about now?" "What? I like you, Samantha." I had fallen for Samantha. Actually, I think I probably liked her even back in middle school. I had given up, thinking she disliked me. When I confessed, Samantha nodded and said, "Me too." And so, after decades, our feelings aligned and we began dating. Back then, I wasn't sure how things would turn out, but now, I'm happy. I enjoy my work, have time with the person I love, and feel fulfilled. It's great to have a competitive environment with my brother. My father has become much more active after his rehabilitation, and I can provide enough support to ease my mother's burden. People make mistakes and sometimes make the wrong choices. Life can throw unexpected events at us, but we can always start over, no matter how many times it takes. I want to approach everything with an open heart and move forward with a positive attitude. That's what I learned from my life. When something happens, rather than getting emotional, I wish people would take a moment to accept things as they are. Because things might just turn around for the better. This is to freshen up your poor-looking self. The client called Brandon threw beer at me. He had the worst personality. The people from his workplace also threw beer at me, and I've reached my limit. I wonder how much trouble he needs to cause us before he's satisfied. Due to Brandon, our company went through a rough patch, and the employees he misled were also in trouble. Thinking about selfish Brandon always made me furious. So, I decided to get back at him. Then, the deal for $200 million is off, effective immediately. What? He looked confused, so I pointed my phone at him to ensure he could hear the playback clearly. Hearing the recorded words, Brandon's attitude changed drastically from before, and he started apologizing. But I didn't pay any attention to him. No matter what he said, I had no intention of forgiving Brandon. My name is Alex Johnson, and I'm 32 this year. I work as the CEO of a luxury watch manufacturing company. My company has rapidly grown by hitting it big with our original brand watches. It's a demanding job, but it's also very rewarding, so I'm satisfied with my work. What got me interested in this job relates back to an incident from my childhood. I had a beloved grandfather, and once his cherished large antique clock broke. That clock was a cherished possession my grandfather had since childhood. He tried various repair shops in an attempt to fix it, but unfortunately, his efforts were in vain. The clock was too old, and ultimately, no one could repair it. Seeing my grandfather sadly looking at the broken clock made me want to fix it somehow. I'll become someone who can fix any clock when I grow up. Is that so? You're kind, Alex. But don't worry about me. Pursue your own dreams. Years passed, and I ended up working in the watch industry, but I never managed to repair that antique clock, which now sits quietly in a corner of my house. My grandfather passed away when I was 20, and not being able to show him the working clock again is one of my biggest regrets. It was just before noon. I had just left the CEO's office and was on my way to the reception room. Along the way, I saw employees from different departments looking tired and chatting in the hallway. Such scenes have become common in the company. Normally, employees from different departments wouldn't have much to do with each other, but due to a staff shortage, this was now a frequent sight. This was all because a few months ago, we had to fire an employee named Brandon, who had deceived several colleagues, causing them to resign. Brandon, a man in his 50s known for his sharp gaze, always flaunted his wealth with flashy ties and watches. His work attitude was significantly worse compared to other employees, which led to his dismissal. However, after being fired, Brandon promised better opportunities at other companies to some of our talented employees. As a result, several employees took his word for it and left the company. This led to a severe staff shortage, forcing various employees to take on additional duties from other departments. Sighing as I walked, I finally arrived at the reception room. I was supposed to meet with a client at this time, but it seems they haven't arrived yet. While confirming there were no visitors inside, I spoke to a male employee who had prepared coffee in the room. It seems our client hasn't arrived yet. Jess, they called a short while ago to say they'd be about 5 minutes late, so it might take a bit longer. In this company, which is struggling with a staff shortage, even as the president, I can't afford to take it easy. That's why I'm doing the work that the sales department would normally handle, but it's started to wear me out. Probably because I've been busy lately filling in at the manufacturing plant, helping with marketing and public relations, and so on, leading to accumulated fatigue. I'm a bit tired, so I'll rest on the sofa. Please don't mind me and continue with your work. Oh yes, understood. As I sat down on the sofa in the reception room and closed my eyes, a wave of exhaustion washed over me. With my eyes closed, various recent events flashed through my mind. If it weren't for Brandon, the company wouldn't be in this situation. It turns out that the employees who resigned, swayed by Brandon's promises, couldn't find employment at the better company he had promised. Those who were deceived couldn't return to our company and seemed to struggle to find new jobs. While I feel sorry for their situation and don't blame them for leaving since where they work is their choice, considering the company's reputation, I couldn't simply offer help easily. So, when recruiting new talent, I plan to hire a diverse range of individuals. This means more preparations and likely even busier days ahead. As I pondered the future, the male employee who had been working in the reception room called out to me. He seemed to have been on the phone with someone while I was resting. "President Johnson, it seems the client has just arrived. I've laid out all the documents for the deal on the table." "Understood. Thanks for preparing. It might be tough since we're so busy, but hang in there until we can hire some new staff." "Yes." After sending off the employee with a bright response, the client appeared in the room a few minutes later. I stood up from the sofa to greet them, but was stopped in my tracks. The flamboyantly dressed man who entered was not the person I was expecting. The man wearing the gold tie was flaunting a luxury brand watch on his wrist as if to show it off. Furthermore, his tie-pin was adorned with a remarkably large gemstone I'd never seen before, and the wallet peeking out from his open briefcase was clearly a designer brand. However, his appearance and possessions were quite shocking. Those aspects were of little consequence. But what surprised me most was the fact that the man was Brandon, who had left the company a few months ago. Faced with this unexpected situation, I was quite confused, but as the head of a company, I couldn't afford to be lost in thought. I took a deep breath to calm myself before turning to face Brandon again. "Brandon, why are you here? It's obvious, isn't it? I'm in charge of this deal now. Can't you understand that? Oh, maybe being poor means you can't even afford a decent meal, so your brain's too slow to keep up." Hearing his rude opening remarks, I wanted to escape from reality, but I endured it for the sake of the company. Perhaps for someone who dines on steak every day thanks to his wife's money, this might be simple, but for ordinary people like us, it was a bit hard to grasp. Is that supposed to be sarcasm? Seems like poverty makes even the bitterness of defeat sound pathetic. Perhaps because I showed up with a raggedy towel when firing Brandon, he's been looking down on me, calling me poor. This digression aside, that day the air conditioning was broken, and I needed anything to wipe off my sweat. It was just something I had on hand to cope with the sweltering heat until the repair service arrived, but I never thought that alone would lead to being labeled as impoverished. In his mind, I must be living in extreme poverty, unable to afford even tomorrow's meal. Unlike me, Brandon seems to consider himself wealthy. He indulges in luxury using the money earned by his wife. Eating steak for breakfast, buying new cars, it seems he used to boast about such things to his colleagues. Despite it being his wife's earnings, he doesn't seem to find it embarrassing to brag about it. So I muttered quietly, though Brandon didn't seem to hear it. "It's not like you earned it yourself." "What was that? Did you say something?" "No, it's nothing." Brandon entered the reception room with an air of nonchalance, plopping down on the sofa. Leaning back, he crossed his legs and gestured with his eyes for me to sit as well, so, Feeling tired, I decided to sit back down on the sofa. It was impossible to have a calm conversation with Brandon, but I couldn't just stand there the whole time either. It's been a while. I haven't seen your face in months. I had to approach this not as interacting with another person, but with the patience one might use with a nonverbal child, to prevent my anger from taking over. Are you doing sales work at your new company, just like you did here? Yeah, I'm cracking the whip as a manager over there. Unlike here, there are no sticklers for rules, so I've been able to work more freely. His words showed no signs of remorse or change. He's probably continuing his selfish ways at his new workplace. This reassured me that my decision to fire him was correct. If something like Brandon had continued to be in my company, other employees would have been influenced, and the company would have been corrupted. It was indeed better to have fired him sooner rather than later. However, I hadn't anticipated that he would deceive other employees and cause such significant damage to the company. By the way, what about the others who left around the same time I did? Have they come back to your company? Despite being the instigator, Brandon asked with feigned innocence. Suppressing the discomfort welling up inside me, I shook my head. Of course not. It's not that simple to just let people go and then rehire them. That's right. He laughed smugly and clapped his hands, seemingly amused. I couldn't understand Brandon's feelings at all. Having asked what I wanted to know and not wanting to engage in any more personal conversation that would upset me, I decided to move on to the main topic. Let's switch gears then and move on to the discussion about our deal. After that, we proceeded with the business discussion. At the end of our conversation, he stared at me intently and said, "You look quite worn out. I heard about the staff shortage. It must be tough. It's sad to see the head of my former company looking like this." Despite his words, he left the reception room with a mocking smile. Frustrated, I pounded the table in front of me with my fist. Brandon likely came here to see the state of the company. He must have had someone else switch roles with him to come here. The thought of his maliciousness in mixing personal vendettas with business made me feel sick. Around midnight, after finishing work, I returned to my apartment and headed straight for the old clock in the corner. Living alone since leaving my family home, I brought some furniture from there to help cope with homesickness. Just looking at and touching these familiar pieces of furniture from my childhood brings me comfort and reassurance. Upon closer inspection, there are lines marked with a marker indicating my growth spurts and stickers from candy wrappers stuck on them. Looking at these traces of my past life reminds me of my father, who watched me grow, and my mother, who would buy me sweets on her way back from shopping. After indulging in nostalgia for a while, I turned my gaze to my grandfather's old clock. All the furniture I brought, like the dresser and table, are functional, except for the old clock, which is the only exception. Having lost its purpose of telling time, it now merely stands in a corner of the room. Whenever I have some free time, I try various methods to repair it, but it remains motionless. Touching the old clock, memories of my childhood with my grandfather come flooding back. When I gaze at this clock and think about time, it allows me to reflect on how I've lived my life. Really, how so? Whether I've lived in a way that I can be proud of, whether I've spent my time meaningfully, and so on. I think the great thing about clocks is that they give you a chance to reevaluate yourself. I loved my grandfather, who would look at the clock with such a gentle gaze. Encouraged by these memories, I felt motivated to face tomorrow with renewed vigor. As I was psyching myself up, I heard the ringtone of my cell phone. It was an email from an employee at the company. The content mentioned company's year-end party. It seemed a slight change in location from last year. It seems the new location is near the company where Brandon works. I shook my head to clear away any unpleasant thoughts and quickly replied to the email. During that time, It seems I had received another email from someone in the sales department. As I read through the contents, I couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. What? A scandal has occurred. The email detailed a scandal involving a company we had considered a reliable partner. In such cases, the course of action for my company is clear. Naturally, continuing dealings with a company involved in a scandal could potentially harm us, so it should be stopped immediately. However, I found it hard to believe that such an incident had occurred. I called a person from the company involved. This company, a high-end watch retailer, had significant business deal with us. It was a company that had never caused any major issues before. I believe Emily was in charge. The person handling our business deal was a woman in her 50s named Emily, known for her seriousness and integrity. Even I, who have been covering for the sales department, have met her a few times. There was a time when an employee preparing coffee in our reception room fainted while Emily was there. Unfortunately, my leg had gone numb and I couldn't move immediately, but Emily kindly stepped in to take care of the situation in my stead. That's why I found it hard to believe that a company with someone like her could be involved in a scandal. According to her, a recent recruit had embezzled company funds and passed them to some nefarious group. Usually, their hiring process is rigorous, but this individual was hired by a temporary staff member, allowing someone with dubious background to join the company. My company is currently experiencing a similar situation with needing replacements, so I couldn't fault them for this. Afterwards, Emily and I had a long talk before ending the call. Looking back, it's ironic that this incident would later lead to getting back at Brandon, showing how unpredictable fate can be. Several weeks had passed. The day of the year-end party had arrived, so I was inside a pub. Sitting at a corner table, I had just finished checking the attendance list. An hour had passed since the start, and the employees, now under the influence of alcohol, were making merry. Due to prior engagements or feeling unwell, a few had left early, slightly reducing the number from the start. Remembering an employee who had collapsed near the pub last year due to excessive drinking made me worried. Fortunately, there were no serious issues or thefts, but it was a chilling moment. It might be wise to check the vicinity to ensure nothing similar happened. I informed a nearby secretary that I would step outside. Then, the secretary quickly brought me a towel. It's a bit unpleasant, but it's because there's a chance an employee who has collapsed on the street might vomit when helped up. Last year, dealing with such a situation was troublesome. However, the towel got slightly dirty, perhaps from touching something on the way. Noticing this, the secretary offered to bring another, but I declined. This is fine. It's just a small stain on the corner, and for someone who can't manage their drinking to the point of passing out on the street, this towel should suffice. While I wouldn't go as far as firing someone for such behavior, I plan to discipline any employee found in such a state. As I left the pub, watched by the secretary, I reflected on the past weeks in the cool night air. With new hires settling in, the atmosphere within the company was stabilizing. The absence of the need to multitask across departments meant fewer chances for major issues to arise. I was enjoying the rare opportunity to unwind at the year-end party when I encountered an unwelcome individual. Standing before me was the person I had reunited with in the reception room weeks ago. "Hey, Alex, what are you doing here?" Brandon had emerged from a nearby pub. Perhaps his company was also having a year-end party. I felt like holding my head in frustration at this coincidence. I wanted to ignore him and pass by, but it seemed he wouldn't allow that. "Speaking of which, your company holds its year-end party around this time, right? We do the same." "Is that so? Why don't you head back inside, then?" "Don't be like that. I just saw one of your employees passed out against a fence nearby." I wanted to end the conversation quickly and leave, but his words caught my attention. Is that really true? Jer, of course. Aren't you going to look for them? I stared at Brandon's smirking face, reeking of alcohol. It sounded utterly dubious, but I couldn't just ignore it. All right, thanks for letting me know. No problem. We used to work at the same company, after all. Reminding myself that I was doing this to ensure my employees' safety, I decided to search the area. After meticulously checking the surroundings for about 10 minutes, I found no sign of anyone resembling our staff. I hoped the inebriated employee had sobered up enough to make it home, but the thought of them being involved in some incident made me anxious. Reluctantly, as I didn't want to intrude on their private lives, I considered calling those who had already left to check on them. That's when Brandon approached me again. Holding a beer mug, he staggered towards me, noticeably more intoxicated than before. Before I knew it, I found myself back in front of the pub where Brandon had been. Brandon, staggering towards me, pointed and laughed. "Huh, you actually took it seriously. That was obviously a lie." It seemed I had been deceived. I could feel my fists trembling with a surge of anger. "Cut the jokes, I'm seriously angry now." "You're already angry, aren't you? Serves you right. And why are you holding a dirty towel? Couldn't you find anything cleaner? You really are poor." Huh? No matter how infuriated I was, I knew I shouldn't resort to violence. As I looked down, trying to contain my anger, something cold was poured over my head. The golden liquid was the beer that Brandon had been holding moments ago. "Serves you right." Then, Brandon dragged me into a nearby pub. Dragged with great force, I fell into the pub. Looking up, I saw the place was filled with middle-aged men in suits, their faces flushed as they made a loud ruckus. Brandon began talking to them in a friendly manner. "Hey, bring some beer over here. This guy is too arrogant. He even had the nerve to fire me from my old job." These people were likely from the company where Brandon worked. Responding to Brandon's call, the men inside the pub started to gather around. With smirks on their faces, they tilted their beer mugs in their hands. The liquid inside was poured over me all at once. Drenched in beer one after another, I stood up, sympathizing with the bewildered pub owner. Brandon and his group were unlikely to bother with cleaning up the mess on the floor. After apologizing to the pub owner, I turned my back on Brandon and his group without giving them another glance. If I saw their disgraceful behavior any longer, I might not be able to hold back from striking. This is to freshen up your poor-looking self. However, just before leaving the pub, I heard a taunting voice and reached my breaking point. I turned to Brandon with a final remark. "Then, the deal for $200 million is off, effective immediately." What? It seemed Brandon was asking for his own ruin, so I decided to push him into the depths of despair. Standing with an empty beer mug, Brandon let out a foolish sound. Faced with his inability to grasp the severity of the situation, I elaborated. "Exactly what I said. The deal is off." "What are you talking about? My company doesn't have such a deal with yours." "Is that so? What about your wife's company?" "No way." A few weeks ago, after checking the year-end party email, I had confirmed that it was from Brandon's wife. During that call to Emily, I had learned about the scandal caused by one of her subordinates. Therefore, she asked me to cancel the $200 million business deal to avoid causing any trouble for us. Despite her husband's behavior, she seemed to be a sincere and good person. Business requires constantly considering benefits, but since it's conducted by humans, it's impossible to completely detach emotions. Torn about the situation, I felt it would be regrettable to lose my connection with her, so I said to Emily on the other end of the phone, "Since you weren't the one who caused the scandal, once the commotion settles down, we'll look for the right time to resume our business deal." While I had to maintain my company's dignity and cut intact immediately, I promised to restart the dealings once things cooled down. but the man before me was unaware of such a conversation. Ending my recollection, I called Emily right there to explain the current situation in a low voice. I also asked her to confront her husband with the reality of the situation. I turned my cell phone speaker towards Brandon. "Darling, President Johnson is right. I was going to tell you later, but for a while, my company won't be able to deal with anyone, so it looks like we'll be living a poor life for a bit. I'm sorry." Hearing this, Brandon spent a few seconds in a daze before his face turned pale. "No, this can't be. You're joking, right? You're not trying to trick me, are you? How could I joke about something like this? Is this for real?" Realizing the gravity of the situation, Brandon trembled and fell to his knees. And he began apologizing to me repeatedly. "Please, don't cancel the dealings with my wife's company. We won't be able to live." Despite his desperate pleas, none of his words resonated with me. "This is serious. Please, we used to work at the same company, remember? He didn't apologize for what he did to my company. He only thought about himself. There was no helping hand for such a person. I might catch a cold, so I'll be heading back." So, without saying a word he wanted to hear, I decided to leave the scene. Upon returning to the year-end party venue, my employees greeted me with shocked expressions. "President Johnson, what happened to you?" The employees, wondering if it had rained, looked out the window in confusion. Among them, a secretary who came close might have realized what happened by the smell of beer. After bringing another towel, she started arranging a taxi for me. Later, I had someone buy me new clothes, and I changed in the restroom, but I still felt sticky. In such a state, I had no choice but to head home early. As I waited outside for the taxi, Brandon ran up to me, out of breath. "Good, you're still here. Please, Alex, President Johnson, don't cancel the dealings with my wife's company. I apologize for splashing beer on you." Brandon repeated his apologies in front of me. Despite his efforts, my mind was made up. Did he think that by pleading earnestly, my feelings would change? Without looking me in the eyes, Brandon kept repeating the same words. Then, hearing his voice, my employees came outside. "Why is Brandon here? And you mentioned beer earlier. Don't tell me you're the one who splashed it on President Johnson." They glared at Brandon with disdain. This could turn the year-end party into chaos. Not wanting to involve the employees who were having a good time, I tried to return inside, but Brandon grabbed my clothes from behind. "Don't leave me. Are you planning to abandon me?" As I pondered what to do, the employees scolded him. "Enough is enough. Do you have any idea how much trouble your actions have caused our company? That's right. Don't cause us any more trouble. We didn't even want to see your face again. Just disappear from our sight now." Brandon, who seemed shocked to be confronted with such words, trembled. Each time he faced the employee's verbal onslaught, he seemed about to say something but ended up only trembling his lips without uttering a word. Eventually, as if resigning to his fate, his shoulders slumped and he wandered off unsteadily. After he was out of sight, a wave of exhaustion hit me. Given his condition, it seemed unlikely he would show up in front of us again. Then, I took a taxi home. Perhaps influenced by my parting words to enjoy the rest of the party on my behalf, it seems the year-end party continued without further issues. Upon receiving photos from my secretary of the employees enjoying themselves, I checked the images and breathed a sigh of relief. As I was about to take a bath, dragging my tired body, the sound of an incoming email notification from my cell phone echoed again. It was a message informing me that Brandon had returned home to Emily. Putting off my bath, I called Emily. "Hello, do you have a moment? My husband just got home and explained everything to me. It seems he was quite rude to you and your company." It appeared she was eager to apologize for her husband's actions. Imagining her sincere face, the unpleasant feelings I had harbored earlier began to dissipate. "It's okay. I'm not too bothered by it." but I'm sorry if he disrupted your enjoyable year-end party. Everyone seems to be having a good time still. Thank you for your concern. I had no intention of blaming Emily. I guess our company is completely disliked by hers now. Not at all. Both I and my team know you're not at fault. Please don't say such things. Thank you. Even if it's just a white lie, it makes me feel a bit better. It wasn't a lie, but she might find it hard to believe. With her heartfelt apologies, I couldn't think poorly of her. By the way, I've been curious about something. Feeling it was cruel to make her apologize any further, I diverted the conversation by asking something I had been curious about for a while. I inquired about the reason why the self-centered Brandon and Emily, with such contrasting personalities, ended up getting married and becoming a couple. I wondered why two people with completely different characters decided to have a wedding ceremony. Oh, that. Actually, we didn't decide on the marriage ourselves. Emily explained awkwardly. It was decided by our parents. Their marriage was arranged without considering their own wills. Their parents were close friends and thought their children would be compatible. Thus, they arranged the marriage, ignoring Emily and Brandon's own desires. Those are terrible parents. I was astounded by her story. But it explained why someone as selfish as Brandon could exist. Emily seemed determined to divorce him. She sounded relieved over the phone. Once I divorce, I plan to start over and rebuild the company. When we're able to do business again, may I reach out to you? Yes, of course. I look forward to the day we can work with your company again. Though she may face many challenges ahead, I'm sure she'll be all right. No matter how daunting the obstacles, she's strong enough to overcome them. Later, it seemed Emily had cut ties with Brandon. After the divorce, he reportedly moved to a rundown apartment. But that wasn't the end of his troubles. The incident that night had been witnessed by a company executive, it seems, making Brandon feel unwelcome at work. I hear through the grapevine that the other employees who doused me with alcohol are experiencing similar discomfort. Some were demoted or punished. Brandon was demoted to an ordinary employee. Eventually, he couldn't bear the hostile work environment. He resigned from the company and became reclusive in his apartment. Meanwhile, as the company continues to grow, we've been facing busier days, but everything is moving along smoothly. Our products are selling well, and the new employees are all hardworking and contribute significantly. Without a troublemaker like Brandon, the atmosphere within the company is always positive. By the time a year had passed, Emily's company had recovered from the scandal's damage, and we were able to resume transactions with them. It was a joy to see her face again when I attended a business meeting with the sales department. It's been a while. Just like I said before, I've come to do business with your company again. I'm really glad you've managed to recover. Gradually, from that reunion, we began to talk more and developed a friendship, which was a positive outcome. As the number of employees increased, I gradually found myself with more free time. I took this opportunity to refine my clock repair skills and finally managed to repair my grandfather's clock. It was a challenging task that took several days, but I managed to fix the old clock. Filled with a sense of accomplishment, I thought of my late grandfather and spoke to the clock. I've finally got the clock working again, Grandpa. I wonder if you're watching over me from heaven. I hope the sound of this clock can reach you there. The ticking of the clock, moving for the first time in decades, sounded like a blessing for the new days ahead.